to Empowered. I'm your host, Jessica Flynn from thejessicaflynn.com, and our show is on a mission to unleash local wisdom for widespread impact. We're committed to creating positive change and empowering the members of our community and beyond. Today, I have someone with me who is making serious waves in the world of mental health. Jaime Armstrong is a multifaceted talent, including a registered psychotherapist. She is a mental health advocate, and more than that, she's a really dynamic storyteller. So she uses her unique blend of play and therapy to challenge mental health stigma, fostering understanding and inspiring change. Essentially, Jaime Armstrong is here to make some major shift happen. So without further ado, let's connect with Jaime. Hi, welcome.
Thank you.
We're so honored to have you. You are doing some serious work in the world of mental health.
Oh my gosh, it is a pleasure to be here, and I'm so excited to talk about it.
I'm excited too, because this whole segment, this episode, is about a different approach to mental health. And you are really leading with heart and a lot of science and wisdom. And I'm just so excited about your brand and your approach to therapy. So I'm starting with a really big question.
Okay.
It seems to be the theme that I'm working with, which is, tell us about your journey in discovering yourself as a psychotherapist and how you found this unique approach to therapy.
Yeah, okay, that is a big question.
It's a big question. It's a big question.
Okay, you know, I don't know that I ever knew I wanted to be a therapist. I think I went through a process of doing a lot of things that I was like, I don't think that's for me. I thought I wanted to be a teacher, and then I realized I didn't want to stand in front of a classroom all day.
I've been there and done that, and I also left.
Yeah,
so, yeah.
Right? I thought I wanted to be a lawyer, and then I realized I couldn't pick and do well on either sides, and I sort of just thought I wanted to be that person in the middle who got to just say what I knew, who got to just share my thoughts and opinions and offer a perspective, and that's how I got into being a therapist.
Cool.
Yeah, from there, the world is huge. They're so big in the ways that people do therapy and the approaches and all of that. And I think my life experiences just sort of brought me into a way of realizing that therapy is not laying on a couch,
right,
and crying and taking a day off of work because our lives are hard enough as it is. And so I really came into this way of using therapy to have fun. And to play, because our brain changes through novelty and play, doing new things and having fun. And so I think I'm just fun in general, so part of who I am just shines through what I do in therapy because it just works together that way.
That's so interesting. I've never heard the words fun and therapy together.
Yeah.
And that really is your whole approach. If you go to your Instagram account at Therapy with Jaime, it's all sorts of color. It is like so much of what you do is the antithesis of that lying down on a couch. So what are some of the moments maybe leading up to your career where you were trying to find the effective method of therapy, or what you find is your best approach and method in bringing that fun in?
Yeah, I think you're kind of asking two questions.
Probably.
One might be sort of how did I get here in my career in that way, but one might also be about how did I find my style within that.
Yes, your style.
I think the way in all of that is that I have been fired from every job I have ever had.
Really?
Yes, and most
Love
people
that.
don't believe me, but I really have. I have been fired from every job I've ever had, and each time I was fired, I always got the same response. You're clinically strong, you're just not a good fit. And so I tried to fit in. I changed what I wore, I went in earlier, I stayed later, I went for lunch, I didn't go for lunch, I did all of the things to fit, and then I just still didn't fit. And I think what didn't fit is that I don't believe in weekly lifelong therapy. I call that a rent-a-friend model, which I think there's better people than me for that. And I do think there's a place for that to happen. But we know so much more now about our brains and science, and that our brains can change. So this idea that we require this weekly lifelong therapy is outdated. And I was working in these systems where that's the approach, to have weekly lifelong therapy. And so I got trained in other approaches that fit with me that realized, nope, we can change our brain and we can do it in an immediate and lasting way.
Amazing. And that's one of the things, I think one of the biggest differences I noticed in your work is the empowerment piece. So you're not, looking for lifelong clients. You're looking to educate and empower your clients or now your audiences with tools. So help us today. Can you teach us a little bit about what our brain is up to? How does it work? How does it function? And what are these updates that you're talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I love that you were doing this because I know you already know. Okay, because some of this is that we have this idea that we actually need coping skills or things like that, but I don't believe in coping skills either, because that sends a message to our brain that we have to live with and manage something. But what we know is we can change our brain. So we don't have to live with and manage something if we know we can change it. So the other part too I want to add is that what I like what you said was that, I want to make sure people know what I know, because I can't live with you and spend every day with you.
Right.
And so just like you don't go to the dentist every time you have to brush your teeth, you're more than capable of getting that done. I think therapy is the same way. You don't have to go every time something shows up. I want to make sure you know what I know, so that you also know how to not only understand your brain, but then what to do about it to ultimately stress-proof it.
Right, stress proofing.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I can teach you exactly what I do in all of my sessions about that.
Please do. Let's learn.
So your hand model is perfect.
Okay.
Okay, so if we made a fist like this and put our hand like that, this is what our brain looks like. If we cut it in half, it would look just like this.
Okay.
Okay, this is our amygdala. It's wrapped by our prefrontal cortex, and this goes into our spine.
Got it.
So our brain has 3 regions: top, middle, and bottom. We used to think there was only 2 regions, and we do have 2 regions, left brain and right brain. But people over-identified with that way of thinking. I'm so left brain, I'm analytical, I'm good with numbers and logic, and I'm so right brain, I'm creative and artistic, and I was always in the middle like, you're not a freaking brain. Stop describing yourselves this way.
Right.
And so there's this brilliant neuropsychologist, Dr. Elizabeth Mikas, and she's in Florida, and she created this new way of thinking about our brain by understanding it from top, middle, and bottom. So the short version of all of this is that our bottom brain is the very first part of our brain to be fully developed. It's involuntary, it's automatic, and it's the same brain all zebras have. So if you imagine a zebra for a moment, its only purpose is to survive, to continue. Protect self, protect family, protect territory, and procreate, continue the line. So our bottom brain's the same brain all mammals have. Its only purpose is to continue.
Basic.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you don't even have to know what to do to survive. Your bottom brain's going to ensure that happens.
Okay.
Involuntary and automatic controls our emotions, our nervous system, and our body movements and sensations. This is huge to get, because we have this idea that if we think positive thoughts, we'll feel positive, or if we choose our emotions, we can
We're
change
in a
them.
lot of control of it. Right.
But our bottom brain is involuntary and automatic. It's going to happen whether you notice it or not.
Right.
So, same brain as a zebra, and this part of our brain is the only part of our brain fully developed for the first 10 years of our life.
Okay.
Yeah.
As a parent, that rings true.
Yeah, that totally tracks, right?
Right, that tracks, that tracks.
So, bottom brain, involuntary and automatic, controls our emotions, nervous system, body movements, and sensations.
Got it.
Then our middle brain looks like a mohawk region of our brain.
Fun.
Fully developed when we're about 11 or 12 years old.
Okay.
That's why most parents call me.
I have a little bit more time. Yeah.
Yeah. Most parents call and they're like, what happened? My kid turned 12. And I'm like,
Yes.
yeah, your middle brain, it's turned on. Right? This middle brain is non-conscious thoughts and images.
Okay.
And it limits and confuses the bottom brain. So it's confusing the bottom brain. Bottom brain can't tell time. Middle brain lives in past and future time zones. So when these thoughts show up, bottom brain responds as if it's happening now.
Okay.
Then our top brain, fully developed in our mid-20s.
Okay.
And this is uniquely human. Logic, reasoning, all sorts of skills that are executive functioning skills happen here.
Okay.
But when our middle and bottom brain experience perceived threat, thinks it's about to be eaten.
Right, that mammal.
Yep.
Yeah.
It flips the lid. All that logic and reasoning goes offline. It's why most people are like, I know this thing, but it's happening anyways. That's because you know it in your top brain, but your middle and bottom brain haven't gotten the information. So when it thinks it's about to be eaten, it flips the top brain offline. The logic and reasoning is no longer available. It's why traditional talk therapy is not as useful for all things, because we know it here, but when our stuff shows up, it's happening and flipping this offline anyways.
Right.
So what I'm doing is teaching people, getting their top brain online, turning off the middle brain to reset the bottom brain to calm optimal.
Right. And your approach, and even just, you're so visual, and this is, you know, in your bio, I understand this dynamic storyteller.
Yeah.
People learn in such different ways.
Yes.
So when you are open and actually teaching, as opposed to just sitting back and analyzing, I imagine you get some light bulb moments. So how often do you, so you're saying you don't need someone on your couch for a lifetime. How quickly have you seen some of these shifts and updates to our brains been made in your experience?
Immediately.
Really?
Yes. I, on average, probably see people about 3 or 4 times. Sometimes it's
Wow.
less and sometimes it's more. It just varies by person. But once you learn something, you can't unlearn it.
Right.
Right? And we're all going to have our own process for that. I know some people who say they potty trained immediately and some who took a long time for it. But once you got it, you got it. Like
Hopefully,
you're not,
yes. Yeah.
you're not sitting around wondering when's the next time you're going to go to the bathroom in your pants. Like
Right.
you're not thinking any of those things. You're just, you know, you've got it.
Yeah.
Once you got it, you got it.
Once you got it, you got it. And you are empowering your clients and your audiences, which we'll talk about after the break, to teach them these things so that they can get it.
Yes.
And stick with it.
Yeah.
That's so exciting and such a fresh, and I would imagine also scalable approach to our mental health crisis. Like if we
Yeah.
educate our communities on what we are in control of and what we're not in control of, like learning this.
Absolutely. It normalizes it, but it also separates it from our identity. Right? Like we are the only creatures that actually took our basic human survival response system, attached our identity to it, and then called it mental health.
Wow.
Like you wouldn't say a possum's depressed when it plays dead, or you wouldn't say a deer has ADHD because it's distracted by approaching hunter, or say a rabbit has anxiety when running from wolf. Like we're the only creatures that attached our identity to our survival response system and called it mental health. So having this understanding of how our brain actually works not only makes sense of it, separates it from who we are, because you are not what your brain has been doing, and then creates the space to do that differently so you can change the brain.
Wow.
Yeah.
You make it sound so simple, and it's brain science, and we're able to take what we're learning and apply it. So we are going to hop off for a quick break. As you can see, Jaime has an incredible talent for storytelling and educating, which is probably why she has come out with a stage performance called An Evening with My Therapist, and we're going to learn all about that after the break. Welcome back to Empowered. We are speaking to storyteller and registered psychotherapist, Jaime Armstrong. Jaime, welcome. You've already taught us so much about how the brain works and how we can, take our own ownership over learning about ourselves and making some of these updates. So and that was, 10 minutes of conversation. So it makes sense to me that you have developed a 1 hour, one woman show called An Evening with My Therapist. Tell us about how that came about, and like really this continues to set you apart as a therapist. We were talking about how you inject fun, and you're such a natural educator as well. So tell me about how that all came together in the form of a show. Why a show?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think what we know is our brain changes through novelty and play. So doing new things and having fun. But part of that is storytelling. Right? We learn through storytelling, and we have this experience that when we get to hear other people's experiences, it connects to our own and helps create change that way. And so sometimes, though, as a therapist, you're not supposed to share your story. And not sometimes, like never.
Right.
I should actually be very clear. We're not supposed to share our stories, right? You don't come into my session and with me and then say like, oh, let me tell you about my life. And I'm like, I'll tell you about mine.
Right.
And, for good
There's not
reason.
that exchange. It's very one-sided.
It is
traditionally.
one-sided.
Yeah.
And for very good reason that happens. But I had an experience where I found myself in an abusive relationship.
Wow.
It was very short, very fast, and as I moved through that, it was really hard to be in my sessions after that when people were coming in saying how alone they felt or how no one understood. And as a therapist, it was difficult for me to sit there and listen and be like, oh my gosh, but I totally get this even greater than you know.
Right.
And so I had this idea that my story was too big for a book and too big for like a small podcast. And I thought, why not do a show? A show where I can share my story, but add in this understanding that people can see someone who is a therapist,
Right.
who experiences human experiences as well, such as abuse.
Someone educated, well off. It can
Yes.
happen to anyone.
It can happen to anyone. And so it really came from that experience and really transitioned into this beautiful sort of experience to connect with other people, to make sense of their experiences, but also see someone move through it with education and all of the experience in this world too.
Right. So that's my next question is, it was novel for you, it was the first time you did it, but it's also novel for an audience to learn from a therapist in that environment. So what were some of the outcomes that you found after the show for the people who were in the audience?
It was so much more than I could have ever expected.
Wow.
I honestly just thought it would be this experience where people could come and learn about their brain and have experiences and make sense of their own stuff and change how we think about therapy and mental health. But what happened was so much bigger. People left with this experience of seeing themselves up there in a way that they thought, oh, well, maybe I can share my story too. And they shared that. They shared about how they learned these concepts about things that they hadn't thought of things in a specific way before, or it changed how they were thinking about things for them. So
Right.
I'm seeing people share more in their ways on their stories. I'm seeing people go out and do things that they've never done before. And that was something I could have never anticipated.
Right. So the impact, and also just scalability, like your sessions, you're able to see one at a time, whereas a theater, could seat more than that. And so I think that's also new and an innovative approach to your industry, is talking about mental health in a room with each other in community.
Absolutely. And so some things that happened from that too, where people have left the show and then came to me and said, I didn't think about it that way. And now I realize I could maybe do therapy different or have the experience different. And then the way that I've been doing my sessions has also changed, because now people who have heard my story directly ask me questions and relate it to their experiences. So sometimes people say, well, how do you date now? And especially having had that, how do you share that? And they're trying to make sense of, I've had this experience, what do I do with it?
Right.
Which is a whole other way of connecting in therapy.
Right, as opposed to, we'll try this, and I don't have a lot of experience like in that session, but of, oh, well, she did it. Almost like the learning from mimicking and seeing an example, and a shining example.
That's exactly it, right? It's another way for our brain to change. Doing new things and having fun while doing it.
And you had so much fun doing it that you did it twice.
I did.
You wrote a second show very soon after you put on the first show. So tell us about, again, same question, why, and why that second show? How is it different?
it just made sense to do the second show. I think the first one was really this experiment of what could be done. I like to just see what happens.
What is an evening with my therapist like?
Right.
Yeah.
And so the first one was more of an overview of who am I and how did I get here, and just this idea of any mental health struggle, where I briefly touched on this abusive relationship. But from the time I did that first show to the 5 months when we did the second show, so much had happened that doing the aftermath was really about the other side of healing. And getting to be an example to show people of like, you can go through these things, but here's how you get to the other side of it, and this is what it looks like. And that one was so neat because it really focused more on abusive relationships with the healing from that, and the feedback from that was incredible to bring awareness to the statistics about abuse, especially in Canada.
Can you share some of those? Just because I think it is important
Yeah.
that we're aware of that.
Absolutely. I mean, it's pretty horrific statistics. What our statistics in Canada say is that approximately every 6 days, a woman dies from abuse in her relationship.
Wow.
Yeah.
In Canada.
In Canada.
Right.
And then the statistics say that about 44% of women, so almost half of women in Canada, have experienced some form of abuse in their relationship, violence in their relationship.
Wow. And so we need to talk about it.
We have to talk about it, but we have to do more.
Right, right. And that show also, so there are a few special components. The particular day of the show had significance.
That's right. It was on the International Day to End Violence Against Women.
Wow.
Which was also my birthday.
Well, happy birthday. Just making all sorts of impact and empowering our community on your birthday.
Well, because also the significance of that was huge, because that day, my birthday, the year before, was the first time this person I had been in a relationship with violated his no contact order by sending me anonymous flowers to my house.
Right.
So I believe a lot of intuition and alignment with the universe, and I think that also comes into my style of therapy, because not everything is mental health, and that we are guided greater. And so having all of that just lined up made that show absolutely had to be something that happened that day.
Right. And it was also connected with Collingwood's and our area
Yes.
Shelter for abused women and children. And so you raised quite a bit of money through your event as well.
That's right. I partnered with my friend's house here in Collingwood, and we raised $2,500. And what was really cool about that is when we donated the money, it was also matched. So they received double that. And we have to have services like these women's shelters. And so
And I believe they receive quite a few calls every year and are quite
Yeah.
overwhelmed with the amount of, just thinking of those stats, that's in our community. It's happening to, you sitting across from me and others who need support. So I think another incredible piece of the work that you're doing in empowering us to learn about mental health is a communal update to the way we're thinking about some of these systemic problems.
Right. That's
Yeah.
right.
So what is your, I imagine your mission after seeing the effect of your style of therapy, what's your latest mission? What are you really inspired by yourself, and what would you like to see the future of mental health look like in our country?
Oh, I just wanted to transform, especially in how we think about it. Not everything is mental health. I mean, sometimes it's the effects of poverty or the effects of abuse in relationships, or sometimes it's our menstrual cycles or the moon energy or infradian rhythm. There's so many other things that, rather than just lumping everything into mental health or thinking that it's this lifelong experience,
Right.
I would love for that to be different, to have this experience that we should all be going to therapy. Right? Our brain is an organ, and just like every other organ in our body, we update it, we have check-ins, we go to doctors to just see how things are working. And so I think it's about this idea of transforming mental health in a way that it's normalized, your experiences are validated, and just something we effortlessly do.
Right. We only have a few minutes left, but you've got this great analogy of our brains like a cell phone that just for me has always worked. And anytime I need like a shift, I think, to that analogy. Could you quickly take us through that one?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many parts
so
of
many,
it, but
yeah.
I think the one that comes to mind is that our brains do work like our smartphones, where sometimes these apps are just open and running in the background, and they're taking up space, using our energy, draining our battery. And so I think about therapy in this way, that not only do we have to clear those apps out, but we also then have to download the latest version of information so that our brains are updated and working
When we
in
know
the
better,
most
we have to
beneficial
do
way.
better, right?
You've got
Bring
it.
that in. Great. So what could a call to action be? So those of our audience watching in their homes, in their offices, what can they do to tap into some of this update energy?
Go to therapy. I mean, that's the real call to action. Go to therapy, check it out, find somebody who fits with you. It's about asking the questions of what's your style, what's your approach, because there's so many different kinds. And I think it's about finding something in a way that works, that's effective for you, but also updating what's been outdated, that it doesn't have to be however you thought it was.
And it can be fun.
It can be fun.
And you can feel connected, and it's okay to maybe shop around for a therapist?
Absolutely. You should.
Right.
You should call and ask people and check in. That's part about finding that fit, because there's only 2 reasons therapy doesn't work. Wrong problem
Yep.
and no relationship.
Okay.
And so if you aren't addressing the right problem, and if you don't have that connection, then it's not going to go anywhere. So
Right.
making sure that you have a fit for that will really cause that lasting change.
I feel so inspired by what's in store for the future of mental health, because people like you are making these shifts, making these changes. And your Instagram is such a fun place to land, where we can learn so much. So just thank you for coming here today and sharing your knowledge. Please continue to shine your light and continue sharing your unique approach to therapy. Because we need it. There's a lot of change that we need to see, and you're a big part of that shift.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, that is it for us today on Empowered. I'm your host, Jessica Flynn from thejessicaflynn.com. Every episode, you can expect a journey into the heart of empowerment and deep learning from incredible wisdom that we have here in our community, and we're working to unleash that and widen the impact beyond. Catch our next conversation on Rogers TV and by subscribing to my YouTube channel at The Jessica Flynn. Until then.